getting ready, literally a week or two away from launching a very large AI platform that accelerates work impact for people, teams, and organizations. So we're kind of inversing the triangle, giving power back to people to understand their true selves.
It's going to be really interesting to watch how AI is going to allow HR to bring the human back to the actual function,
Those who understand AI the most fear it the most. I think AI is going to start to empower individuals and teams more. Teams will be able to spin up technologies. We have to think about change as momentum, not as run.
Welcome back to the Human Capitalist Podcast. I am your host, Trent Cotton, and Human Capitalist. And today we have got a fantastic speaker. Just his background is quite interesting. So, Dan, welcome to the show.
Well, hey, Trent, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. This will be a lot of fun.
Yeah, normally I try to introduce guests, kind of give like a little bit of a bio, but I was reading through yours and I was like, oh, no. He's going to have to unpack all of these changes. It's quite the background. You want to, from producing to just let everybody in on your little secret of a career history.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short, not to bore everybody, but I will just state this. I didn't come up in a traditional way into HR tech whatsoever. In fact, I would probably argue in my mid-20s, I'm not sure I knew what HR stood for. And but what I have come up through is creating and storytelling and challenging the status quo. So I after school, I kind of dropped out of life, played in punk rock band for about 10, 12 years, put out records, toured. While I was doing that, I started my first tech company, Modern Survey. We were actually the first SaaS employee listening platform.
Okay.
Grew that for about 17 years. We kind of grew up with companies like Glint and Qualtrics. We were all kind of starting around the same time, and sold that to a company called Aon. So they're a big company that bought Modern Survey. Then fast forward, in between, I do a lot of film producing, a lot of public speaking as well. But RADICL is the latest company that I founded a few years back. And now we're getting ready, literally a week or two away from launching a very large AI platform that accelerates work impact for people, teams, and organizations. To date, we've been more of a boutique, but work with many companies in an advisory context for big HR transformation and change. So there's a really fast.
That's awesome. So what problem are you trying to solve with your current company?
Yeah, so it's pretty straightforward. I hate to put things in too simplistic of terms, but organizations need better connection, clarity, and ultimately that drives better collaboration. So we are ultimately driving for building trusted teams within organizations and empowering people. So we're kind of inversing the triangle, giving power back to people to understand their true selves, who they are, how they fit into their team through a combination of what matters to them, their personal mission, their vision, their skills. Then within a team context and construct, you can understand what might be missing, what we might need. It's all AI based. So AI is kind of helping formulate objectives of the team, what you're working towards, what you're trying to achieve. Do you have the right people on the team? How can you work more effectively with people on the team? So it's really I would say one of those mirrors in hotels that like you turn and it's really close. You can see yourself like, oh, what's that? It's that type of mirror that we put on yourself and across the team. But ultimately it's really fun too. It picks up on social context of sharing who you are and what your favorite song is and what music you love and what drives you and this is the type of connection that we're missing, and that's what
Totally.
RADICL does.
The human aspect of it.
The human aspect of it, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten too caught up in KPIs.
KPIs and HR has kind of lost its soul over time. With the KPIs, the process, the regulatory, the compliance, all of that. It's going to be really interesting to watch how AI is going to allow HR to bring the human back to the actual function. So I define human resources a little bit differently. I hate the term HR.
Mhm.
I prefer human capital because I see our role as being in charge of the largest revenue producing asset and the largest expense in the organization. And of course, it's people. So you've kind of got a very unique view, working across industries, company sizes, economies, and everything. What do you see changing in human capital over the next 1 to maybe 2 or 3 years?
Yeah, I think I'm going to start with the elephant in the room. We will touch on it, of course, throughout this conversation, but AI, whether we like it or not, it's here. It's changing things, especially in recruiting. It's definitely changing things in people analytics and predictive analytics. It's definitely changing things in learning and development. And I'm speaking more classic, business function right now around what's going to change from an HR perspective. So I do think it's getting comfortable with AI. We just finished some research, and we'll be putting this out. But at a high level, our findings are pretty remarkable and understandable. Those who understand AI the most fear it the most, and the reason, and the big chunk of this audience is HR, because they know how to use it and they understand the power that it can have. So it's the ostrich head in the sand. Well, this is just, it's not really happening and we don't have to worry about it. So I don't really fear it. So I always recommend understand and learn how to use it, because that gives you insights and visibility into how to continue to grow. Because it doesn't mean we're replacing the human at all. It just means the roles of human and machine are starting to change a little bit. So, so I think what's going to change, absolutely, the recruiting function is changing. Employee experience and employee engagement, we know, has been changing on a regular basis, but that will absolutely change into more real-time AI-driven insights. When you need it, why you need it, where you need it, who you need it for. And then definitely learning and development. If I had to break it into 3 categories, it's changing.
So do you think, or do you foresee kind of that analytic function within HR being driven more by like agentic AI and putting that data automatically, like not passing through HR, but putting it directly in the hands of the leaders that need to know that information?
Definitely. So I think HR is gonna be taking on a role. I think there's still an ownership and responsibility for the humans in an organization. I don't think that's going to change. It's just kind of we've talked about HR becoming much more strategic and working with the business for years and years and years. It's happened a little bit, but I think AI is going to start to empower individuals and teams more. Teams will be able to spin up technologies. It's already happening.
Oh yeah.
On a regular basis. So I think the job of HR is to set wider context across the organization and understand that the most powerful part are individuals and teams, as long as there's clarity and understanding from an organizational standpoint of where we're going. Again, if we don't know directionally where we're going, we still have chaos. So there is an opportunity to get more focused on agility, ideation. How do we disrupt new ideas, bring new ideas forward, versus being so caught up in timelines and KPIs and it is the momentum that HR needs to learn how to manage more effectively than the arrival of checking boxes. And I think that's
Right.
going to be a big change of that.
Yeah, so you're kind of foreseeing it turning into more of a consultative and strategic position. That I think for a long time, the good HR people, that's where they've always wanted to function, but they were drug into the
Yeah.
paperwork chasing, the processing, and the KPIs and all that.
Yeah. I think, think about the power of what AI can do now, even just for HR teams who might still be stuck in the more of the transactional side of HR. It's just, but there's still a strategy opportunity and being much more in touch with the business that HR I think needs to start to be invited to the table more or set the table or whichever
Agreed.
way you want to look at it.
Yeah, totally agree to that. Now, what are some of the AI trends that you're watching, and why do they have your interest?
Yeah, so I think, well, like I said, for sure, this streamlining recruitment is definitely has my interest, and for a lot of reasons. I think that's a whole podcast in itself, but at a high level, the speed at which we can analyze people, resumes, skills, and quickly attach and make decisions on, are you a good fit, not a good fit, is amazing what the tech can do. It's also scary as hell because
Really?
losing some of that human, well, I've built enough companies in my life and hired enough people in my life to know it's that magical moment in an interview or talking to someone where they lean forward and show this enthusiasm, and you're like, I'm hiring you, like, not even because of what your resume says, but because of just this one little thing that happened in the conversation, right? And that's sort of the nuance and those magic that I'm worried that we lose a little bit. On the other hand, I know we can move faster, and I think some of what AI can help us streamline, and it's been there for a period of time now, but so I think it's just understanding the balance. I think balance is going to be a key word to all of this. So again, that's a big area. I think the second area that I'm watching, and it's obviously a big part of what RADICL's doing, is that self-reflection and understanding yourself and a little more honestly, and people who you work with. And I think AI can really help quickly highlight, here are some strengths, here are some opportunities, here's some focus areas, here's some watch out areas, here's what we suggest. We know you're getting ready to meet with Trent. Hey, here's some things I know about Trent. Here's some things I know about Dan. Here's where you guys are going to hit it off. Here's things where you might disagree, but it'll still be it'll still be great. Like stuff like that. That's the type of, I think, insight and power that AI can give to us, that will just make again, back to connection and trust. Those two pillars that I believe are the biggest opportunity for organizations and HR and growth.
That the last example you gave was interesting. I'm working on a presentation for some college students about how to use Gen AI the right way, and it does not include writing your resume. And one of them, I actually told them, I said, research the person that you're interviewing with, but do it differently. And so I give them a prompt to use into Perplexity. And so I just use myself as being the interviewer. And then I had my husband's resume. And so I put his resume in there and then put the prompt in. And I read the output, and it was really interesting. Like some of the similarities between, like both of us have worked in Agile, which I felt kind of bad because I went to him. I was like, hey, wait, you've worked in Agile before? Why haven't you ever told me about this? It took a damn AI to tell me this, But I think that there's a lot there because it allows you to kind of have it's natural connection, but it's bringing up something like, hey, here's where you're connected that may take a little bit more time in the conversation, right? So you can establish that in an interview or, a meeting with a prospect pretty quickly.
I mean, think about the way social media works. I mean, it's terrible on one hand, but it's amazingly powerful on the other. You
Oh,
just
yeah.
think about something, and all of a sudden, it's in your feed, right?
Oh, yeah.
And typically, it's getting. On one hand, you might argue, uh, yeah, it can be a little frustrating, but secretly, it's like that song you hear on the radio. You're like, I don't want to admit that I want to turn the song up, but when I'm alone, I do. So the like the stuff you
Right.
see in your feeds, like for the most part, like, yeah, I'm actually kind of interested in this,
Yeah.
and so because it knows and it learns, and I think so. The more we can apply that for good and
Mm.
relationship building again, and connection in the workplace. I mean, to me, that's the magic that can happen.
Well, one of the things that really stood out to me about RADICL is this emphasis on overcoming inertia in the workplace culture. So if you had a magic wand and had to dismantle, let's just say, 3 HR practices that are holding organizations back from truly stepping into that transformation, what would they be, and what would modern equivalents be, and what would you put in instead? So, what would you dismantle, and what would you replace it with? Is probably a shorter way to ask that question.
Yeah. So the first one, I feel like it's an area that I spent a big chunk of my career in, which is employee listening and employee engagement. But that's the first thing I would dismantle. And I want to be really clear for those listening. I'm a big believer in progression. I'm not one to sort of say, well, uh, 15 years we shouldn't have ever been doing this. I'm like, because that's not true. 15 years ago, it was great. It was the best thing we had in some cases. But if we keep doing what's just comfortable and easy, it loses impact. So the first thing I would dismantle for any organization from an HR perspective is just the annual survey. And many companies are, but our listeners would probably be shocked to know how many still don't.
Mm-hmm.
And good for a lot of the employee engagement vendors and tech vendors out there. They still have the business because of it, and I know many of them well, and many of them are great friends. So no offense, but most of them are also reimagining how we listen and understanding that it's not so much what we say from an opinion standpoint, but it's what we do, right, in the
Mm-hmm.
flow of work. So it's leveraging technology, and there's a lot out there that is a little bit more um, based on action and not opinion. Doesn't mean we don't want opinions, but in a 5-point Likert scale, 60 questions that aren't really relevant to the business, and we look
Right.
at it with a Polaroid year over year, and we set up action planning that does nothing. Need I
But
say?
you're actually, I think you're giving people a lot more grace, because I don't. I think they review it, but there's no action planning behind it. And to your point, 70% of those that do the action planning, it's rah rah tutti frutti in the meeting, and then they go out, and then it just gets buried under the rug. So
Yeah,
the data is interesting if you actually get into it and start reading and acting on it. But
the
I'm
data's
kind of with you on it.
yeah. I mean, that's the thing, and then that's why then that's why I give a little grace, because there are organizations that use the data well and really are committed to it, and the best organizations who do employee surveying still are completely transparent and open about the findings, and they
Hmm.
don't they're not spinning data lines to meet uh, directional objectives or
Hmm.
success metrics. They're being super honest and again using it as a mirror. So it doesn't. I'm not suggesting that the whole idea of asking employees what they think or feel, we should dismantle that completely, but it has to progress.
Hmm.
Now, the second one probably sound like a broken record, but of course, performance management. I mean that
Hmm.
we've been working on that for a long time now. There's anyone feel free to reach out to me to talk about this. There's some cool tech out there. There's some cool things happening there. We still have a long ways to go. And what I mean by that is the way we work is so much more fluid, cross-functional teams. The concept of hierarchy, for the most part, is dead in team structure, and so performance management is just a very awkward, old school approach to managing success. So there's new ways and considerations to think about that. And the third piece is definitely the social connection of people. I mean, there's employee resource groups, things like that. These are all great, and I think from the HR perspective over the years have been effective, but it's still very old fashioned. And I think there are new ways and new technologies to reimagine how we really get to know each other, what matters to each other, gives everyone a voice, regardless of who you are, what you look like, what you believe in. And especially, I don't want to get political, but in a world where there's a lot of weaponization of ideas and what side of the line you might stand on. We're losing the ability to sort of show up with empathy and open minds. So I think HR is going to have to address that a little bit more than they are. It's not a sideline game anymore. I think you kind of need to get in the game.
And it's funny. I get a lot of leaders that are actually reaching out going, how do I handle this? Like I've got, this part of my team believes this way and this part of my team believes this way. And it seems like, with all of the stuff that happened around the election, that it's just gotten even more polarizing. And so I do spend a lot of time coaching people outside of my organization on just how to handle this,
I mean, just the quick analogy I'll use, and I probably get a lot of the similar questions you do around this. I do my best, and it's funny. I don't know what made me think about it, but like Super Bowl commercials and one brand, and I'm not an advocate of this brand, and I'm not suggesting I believe in everything about them or the quality of what they make, but Jeep always goes out of their way to talk about, again, finding common ground and working together, and that's their brand, right? They're representing sort of like anybody can drive a Jeep, doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. And I think the analog that I use often is, for the most part, remove fringe cases of craziness. Forgive my language on that, but that exists on both ends. For the most part, we all want to be on the same island or go to the same remote place where a Jeep can get, right? What we get stuck with is, how are we going to get there? That's where we debate, but we forget we actually all kind of want to get to the same place, right? We all want to get to the same place, and whatever, we could bullet point what that utopia looks like and feels like. And not that, of course, we'd ever have utopia, but we all look for that. We all want equal opportunity. We all want pay equity. We all want a place where we can feel safe, where we can grow, where we can develop. I mean, you name it. But again, it's the how we get there where the fists go up, and it becomes very divisive and politically divided. And then that happens within organizations too. So I always ask everyone to sit back and remember where you're going, what it's going to feel like when you get there, and use that as a tool to reinforce concepts of empathy that have been lost. Listening and agreeing to disagree, and all those things that we know we hear about so often.
Well, and there's a place for a conversation, and I think that, as leaders, it's kind of like, how do I facilitate a conversation without it becoming a knockdown, drag out? And it's just becoming more and more difficult, I think, for people to kind of find their way. And so let's, we've talked a lot about AI, and one of the big things that always comes up, and I like to get different perspectives, is on the ethical deployment of AI. And I know you've got some experience in this. But how do you prevent people analytic tools from becoming surveillance systems? There's a very fine line there. And what guardrails would you put in place to mandate that emotion recognition AI or productivity monitoring?
Man, that's a big question. So let me, I guess, to use an analog, think back at what we were just talking about with employee survey, and there was a worry, which was not true, or election fraud, or any take anything like
Right.
this, where everything's being there's managers are going to use data against you. They have access to your individual data, and what you say can be held against you. And now you're not going to get that promotion. That was pretty, for the most part. I'm not saying it's never happened, just like there's never, of course, not saying election fraud has never happened, but to suggest that it's pervasive and exists daily and is a reason not to do it was not true whatsoever. For the most part, we respectfully use data. Maybe we didn't always get it right, and how we used it from an action planning standpoint, that's another conversation. But so fast forward to AI. I mean, I think number one, there's this binary, kind of to my earlier point. The more you know, and not in a bad way, the more you're aware that AI can jump in and start doing what you might be able to do as a human. So you do actually, because you're using it more, you start to trust it more. So there is this binary sort of, do I trust it? Do I not trust it moment that everyone needs to go through. So I think, and to trust it, we need to, be super intentional with how we use it, where we use it, make sure we're using it as a tool, make sure it's used in concert with humans. Even if it can do more, it has to sort of be a partner. It'd be like giving all the power to one person on a team, thinking the rest of the team are going to feel good. So to me, that I always start there. I mean, from a guardrail perspective, think of AI as another team member, and you have the right to disagree with AI, even though it's a machine. And you should disagree, and you have the right to debate. Of course, and I use that I don't expect you to start sending messages to Chat GPT or your AI of choice and debate, but you get the idea. So I think that, to me, it has to be used carefully with intentionality. And as long as you have a clear purpose, direction, and focus in your North Star where you're headed, and I think this empowers and gives people power, and also respects the machine. And I think that's important.
Yeah, it's funny. The advice that you give is kind of the same. I parrot that a lot. I tell them I manage it just like an employee. I'm going to inspect what I expect, and I'm not going to hire a new employee and just expect them to know exactly what needs to be done. There's some onboarding, there's some training, there's some coaching involved. The AI is the same. And once you get a comfort level, then you let it off to the races. But maybe you don't check it every week, check it every month, or check it every quarter. So glad to know that I'm not crazy for kind of seeing that.
It's powerful, but I mean, even there's a lot of AI in our RADICL platform, and if you're not carefully thinking about the prompts that are used, and I mean, AI can give you terribly bad information. It's not necessarily wrong in all cases. It can just be really wrong for you, or wrong for the business, or wrong for the direction and the focus of what you're trying to accomplish. So to blindly, you just listen to it if it exists is really dangerous. And so I'm not saying to not believe it. I'm just saying again, it's just a person. It's an idea. It's an opinion, just like anybody on a team would bring an opinion.
And I've noticed too that you all advocate shifting from employee engagement metrics to more of a whole person experience design. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. I mean, so classically, in employee engagement metrics are, I believe, in this organization. So, and I want to stay here for a long time. I feel like I have an opportunity to thrive and grow in this organization. I believe in senior leadership. It was all based around just more the classical art of business, about my management, I'm going to hang around, my belief in leadership, and I get learning opportunities and I can grow, develop. And that sort of was an engagement index. And of course, so there was, not to say there aren't good questions that can be asked from time to time, but a whole person really empowers and gives energy back to the individual. So making sure that they're heard and that they're seen and that their voice feels equal, right? And so and it's also a feeling of safety and feeling like you can it's an all or welcome feeling and mindset. The best organizations, you grab anybody, I don't care who they are, at random, and you ask them, do you feel like you're making an impact here? Do you feel like you're a part of something bigger than yourself? Right? And again, do you believe in the work you do, and does it inspire you? And that has a lot more. And so those type of constructs are much more linked to the whole person. And this matters to me. These are my personal values. I want to be a part of something that matters, and I want to be on the right side of history for me, whatever
Right.
I believe in. So that's what we mean when we talk about the whole person, and really focusing on connection and relationships and trust, and not just opportunity and growth. Now, with that said, I do want to say this: you have to get the sharp edges taken care of. And when I say sharp edges, pay, right? I mean, like, don't get me started on pay equity issues, and just fix it. That's my 2 words for any organization who still struggles with this. I don't have time as a consultant. I don't even have time to say, well, let's dig in and see, I don't care who you are, everyone should get paid for the job that they do. Regardless
Absolutely.
and if you can't figure that one out on your own, then I'm probably not the right consultant for you. But that's a sharp edge. And there are a handful of other things. We can't do all this the whole person, real values and purpose driven culture if there's still sharp edges, like terrible benefits, or you miss paying people, or again, you're paid under market, or you're paid 30% less because you're a woman doing the same job that a man does, right? I mean, whatever it might be, this stuff just needs to be fixed, and then we can really start to focus on the other stuff that truly matters.
And you hit on the purpose driven aspect, and I think it's overlooked a lot, because there have been, I do work with charities and do some advising, and it always amazes me the amount of talent that sits in the nonprofit world. And some of them could go into the corporate side and just make money hand over fist, but they really believe in whatever the purpose of that nonprofit is, and they knowingly take 50% less.
Yeah.
And then you have corporations that go, people don't care about the purpose. People don't care about the purpose. I think there's something intrinsically human about that we need to feel that connection. It affects your retention, your loyalty, your production, your pride. You want to be proud of where you work and the work that you do. And I think companies are really overlooking that.
Yeah, I mean, if I know I give try to make it a 45-second story here. So one of my last companies, it was during the recession in the late 2000s, when a lot of tech startup companies were hit, and we were a very purpose driven company, a very human centric driven company, before even the concept of being human centric was even official terminology.
Well, and can we also say that the fact that companies can tout differentiation as being human centric, there is something inherently wrong with that baseline line of thought. Everything
Yes,
should be human centric, but nonetheless.
absolutely. So I guess we didn't even think about it too much. We just we loved our people, and we had a pretty big team at the time. and just everyone believed in the mission and the purpose of what we were trying to do. And it's just like this incredible team. And so most organizations, many went out of business, many downsized. What we did is we decided, and I've told the story in speaking before, but myself and two founders, we just froze pay for us, so the three of us. And we didn't articulate this or communicate this, but of course our people started to hear about this and they learned about this. And of course we had to cut some like the bait back then. It was, there was free snacks in the free, like, we had to cut corners a little bit here and there and nobody cared. But what happened was employees started coming to us and saying, I want a pay cut too. And I kid you not, like there was almost a line of people saying, and it was because they knew we would be stronger on the back end if we all remained together. And, versus, well, we're going to downsize and then we'll go rehire, find talent. It was more about the people right then, right there that mattered. And that if we all sort of take a little bit of a pay cut, if we can, those who couldn't, and those who
Right.
would, it was almost, to this day, it changed my life. I wouldn't, because we probably would have gone out of business if not for what our people did. And guess what happened? We came through. We were, of course, able to pay everybody back. Then we started to grow by 30-40% a year. And it was because of our people. And I forever, which is probably why I'm so passionate about the work I do now, because
Makes sense.
it was like a humbling moment, right? You can't even just describe that. So to me, that was a lesson in life that I'll take with me to the grave, is that you empower your people, inspire your people, you become inspired by them. That's the most important thing. It's like, they actually inspire you. And then, and if everyone feels like that, magic happens. And when magic happens, organizations do thrive, and revenue does increase, and profitability does go on. Like the stuff that does matter too. And that's, we all want to be a part of businesses that succeed. But the starting point has to be your people. So I just wanted to share that quick story.
I love that. And it's funny, I had a conversation, my daughter's graduating in May, and she's part of this professional organization, and they have this competition, and she was the president, and there were times where she's like, Dad, why am I doing this? Nobody's doing this, nobody's pulling their weight. And then, thankfully she has her mom that gives her a lot of accolades and everything. I'm like, sweetheart, it doesn't change in the real world. I hate to tell you, but you get even more frustrated because rather than people being in their early 20s, there are people in their late 40s that are still not get the concept of work. But they ended up winning, and she called me, and she was upset, and she was, Dad, I'm crying, but it's like happy. She said, I wasn't directly involved in this. They won, but I feel, I said, you did the work to get them on the trajectory for them to win. I said, that's called being a leader, and so, and I told her, I was like, I wish I would have learned this at your age. It was my mid-30s before I really truly understood what it was. So it was kind of a fun little moment as a dad to go, oh wow, she's learning some lessons way ahead of her time, and I'm grateful for that.
Good for her. That's great.
Yeah. So you want to move into some rapid fire?
Sure. Yeah. I knew there was one question that you wanted to ask I think it was, if organizations had $25,000, what would they say?
Oh yeah.
And the only thing I want to say there, it's a hard one to answer across the board. But I would say, if you whatever it is, and if you, from a budget standpoint and from leveraging tech standpoint, of course, always again start with what are we trying to accomplish? What human behavior are we trying to change? So make sure you understand that before you just implement new tech. But I would absolutely make sure it's focused on collaboration, the art of decision making, sharing innovative ideas, ultimately driving productivity. And this is what we call work impact. So and connection is wrapped all around that, and trust is wrapped all around that. So really think, and so it's really the human side of technology that now works in a world that is more cross-functional, is more remote, is more hybrid. So that would be my suggestion. Just get rid of all the stuff that could be cool, but and just focus, dial in to that collaborative tech that allows ideas to surface and allows productivity and team cohesiveness to grow.
Yeah, one of my previous guests, Brad Owens, we talked a lot about automation, and I asked him what his rule for automation was, and it was very simple but very impactful. He said, if whatever I am doing, so this process or this step in the process, if it is not helping me to create a human connection, I'm going to find a way to automate it. And I thought that is such a very complex and simple way of looking at it, and it sounds kind of like the same thing of, if you're going to have that 25,000 and nothing else for the rest of the year, you really are also kind of focused in on what's going to elevate that human experience and human connectedness.
Yeah.
Love that. So rapid fire, what is a book that changed your perspective on HR or business?
It's not an HR book, and maybe someone will find it nowadays, unfortunately, but controversial. One of the the nicest guys in rock and roll, who has been going through some tough times, which is Dave Grohl. But he wrote a book called Storyteller, and that book I read somewhat recently. What just the art of commitment, teamwork, and just staying true to what you believe. That it was just so enlightening, and I really enjoyed the book. I'm a huge fan of course, the punk rock movement and where he came out of, and so that book, the first one that comes to mind is that.
I love books like that though. That just kind of you're going at it to get away from things, but you're actually able to kind of reframe some of the issues that you're dealing with at work. I love books like that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So what is a people problem that you had to solve, and what did you learn from it?
I would say over the years, just make it fast and easy, but it's listening first. Even if you are pretty sure what you want to do, or directionally where you want to go, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, or even whether you're writing a song or music, or producing a movie or directing a movie, hearing ideas, because number one, it gets people invested into the idea, even if everything they say is exactly what you thought. So it's not a waste of time ever, because it just creates energy. Right. But number two, more importantly, it might actually provide new context and a new lens and a new light into how you work through something. So I've learned to make sure I listen first, sort of proactively lead the witness, and over the years, that's something that I've just learned the power.
Love that. And where can people find and engage with you?
So LinkedIn is, of course, probably the easiest. If you search, there are a few Dan Rileys, not the most common name, but if you search Dan Riley and RADICL, I will come up on top. You can find me on Instagram too. Search Dan Riley RADICL, and when you post this, I can give you my social handles, and you can find me there. But LinkedIn's probably the easiest. I speak a lot. I post a lot of stuff. And I try to be responsive if anybody reaches out and wants to chat. So that's the best
awesome.
place.
And then what's your mic drop moment? Something that you want to leave the audience with that will remember this experience?
I mean, I guess my reminder for everybody, and I've said this before, but I want to keep saying it because repetition is important. Um,
Mhm.
any change in life, and especially change in business, and we were talking about how HR is changing, and we have to think about change as momentum, not as arrival. It's a really dangerous way to think about the success of change through a binary lens. You have to look at the movement and the momentum, because only then can you see progress and celebrate. Even if it doesn't feel like change is happening, you can celebrate the few things that did happen, and that will actually help you accelerate and continue to move forward. And that gives you wind behind you to keep blowing way past whatever point of arrival that you've designated for yourself. Because change is a constant and it's fluid. So I guess the mic drop statement would be: change is momentum, not arrival. And it's something I try to remember in all aspects of life: personal relationships, personal focus areas, and business, and anything that we're doing.
Love that. Well, Dan, I really appreciate you taking some time. I know you're a busy guy, and jumping on, and I am sure that you will probably get a lot of questions from the audience. I know I've got a couple of follow-ups that I'll probably ping over to you, or I'll just ask you at one of the next conferences. And I know you and I have talked about we're going to cross paths a couple of times, so I'll ask you in person.
Well, thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Human Capitalist. This channel is all about community, so comment, subscribe, and join the conversation. This is Trent Cotton, your Human Capitalist, signing off. Remember, invest in yourself, own your potential, and keep building your own human capital. I'll see you next time.